TCU Place, formerly known as the Saskatoon Centennial Auditorium, has turned 50 years old this year, and I've invited the Chief Executive Officer, Bob Korol, to come and talk to us today and give us a bit of background on the 50th anniversary of TCU Place, as well as the market analysis and what's going to happen in the future. Bob, thanks so much for coming down.
Pleasure to be here, Randy.
I want to ask you, you've been in the city for a while, and when we look at TCU Place and the scale of it, scope of it, it was a big deal when it opened, and it's still a pretty substantial structure right now. What can you tell us about the 50th anniversary, and maybe we'll get into what the future is going to hold?
Well, you know, maybe a bit of history or background to the actual facility itself, Randy, which I always find quite interesting. But you know, sort of back around the mid '60s, you know, there was a strong agenda to try and build public assembly facilities right across Canada. So, in essence, I think at the time, I think it was the Liberal government went ahead and said, you know, we're going to build facilities in every capital city right across the entire country, which at that stage of the game meant that Regina was going to get some sort of public assembly type facility. And going back, and people would remember this, of course, is back in the time, it was called the Centre of the Arts. It's now called the Connexus Arts Centre, but it was the Centre of the Arts. So the mayor of the city of Saskatoon at that time, which was Sid Buchwald, you know, came up with this idea or mandate within himself to say, you know, Saskatoon needs one of these facilities and we need to do something about it. So, you know, he went ahead and, you know, sort of gained some public support in and around that, and they put a group and committee together, and various names that kind of come back from the past. But you're talking about people like Blair Nelson, you're talking about people like C. Sweeten, you're talking about people like Jack Byers, and they were all involved in this process to try and build this, you know, to build this facility, you know, and be a gathering place, if you like, for the citizens of Saskatoon. And there was all kinds of controversy around that. I mean, just huge concerns. I mean, when the budget first came out and the capital costs associated with it, people were just jumping around. I mean, why do you want to spend $3.5 million on a facility like that? You're going to put our taxes up. You're going to do all these sorts of things, right? At the end of the day, you know, they kind of had to push themselves through that. And of course, I mean, the Centennial Auditorium, as it was called at the time, came out in 1968. There was some budget overruns. I think it came in at just around $5 million. But I mean, you know, just the foresight, I guess, you know, to build a facility of that nature back then. You know, we've got a theater as it stands just now, the Sid Buchwald Theater, named after you know, the former mayor and of course senator. And you know, this facility holds 2,200 or just over 2,000 people, I should say. And I mean, at that time, you know, someone's turning around saying, Saskatoon's 125,000 people. What do you need a theater for 2,000 people for? Who wants that? But, you know, I mean, in this day and age, what tremendous foresight that we had from, you know, some of the people that were responsible for our city back then.
And we've had an addition on the east end of the building about 10 years ago or so. How does that work for you and the facility now with any conventions and conferences?
You know, and you know, just speaking to that point, Randy, I mean, you know, we now have a business model which was previously just based around a theater. Of course, we had the basement area of the original part of the building, which is now 50 years of age, and you know, lots of different events like Kinsman Sports Celebrity Dinners and so on and so forth that have been hosted down there and so on. And that wasn't actually built until after the facility got going. But, you know, 10 years ago, as you would suggest, the business model slightly changed. And, you know, the city council at the time, I guess, you know, the elected civic officials, I should say, made the decision that, you know, we need to move forward. We need to have some sort of convention-type facility complex in place so that we can encourage economic impact and economic development within our city, getting people coming to Saskatoon, you know, shopping in our malls and retail spaces and going to our restaurants and so on and so forth. So, you know, right now, I mean, we've got two elements to our business, as you would suggest. The new bit, which is primarily related to the convention side of our business. Of course, we do some dinners and banquets and galas and that sort of thing in and around that part of our facility. But then, of course, we've got separate to that, or what we try to link in together, is the theater, which is the bit that's 68 years of age.
So we've just come off the release of a market analysis in terms of a downtown arena, perhaps, and a convention center. We see and hear that there's a lot of conferences that are maybe flying over us in terms of our size. What has that analysis yielded in terms of some opportunities and nuggets for us?
You know, I think the big thing, Randy, you know, as a result of the market analysis is that, the city of Saskatoon, if it wants to continue to be contemporary within its times, we've got to move forward and we've got to start thinking about what we're going to do in the future. And, as you mentioned, from the convention perspective, if we don't do something with the facility that we've got now, what essentially happens is that, you just kind of fall by the wayside. I mean, Saskatoon never had anything 10 years ago. I mean, and if you leave to what you have now, you're not going to have anything on the convention side in 10 years' time. And the same sort of type scenario applies to the arena. So, we look at things even around our theater, which the market analysis suggests that we should keep the same. It needs some renovation. There's discussion points in and amongst that capital costs to renovate our theater is going to be somewhere around $20 million. But, what have we got out of that facility over the last 50 years? People's experiences and the enjoyment that they've had of it. I mean, we've had Johnny Cash there. We've had Ravine there. We've had the Bee Gees there. I mean, all these sorts of people. I mean, now, of course, you have the arena, but they brought so much joy to the people of Saskatoon and the wider province, I feel. We've got to do something about these facilities. They're not going to last forever.
I don't think that with everything that I've read about this and growing up with it, nothing's ever forever.
No.
But with that, there are other cities that are competing with us in terms of trying to generate the economic impact. Do you see a footprint changing or the renovations at $20 million? Do you see any opportunities to maybe expand or rebuild or add on some way, shape, or form in that area? Or?
From the theater perspective,
from TCU's place.
From the theater perspective, I very much see some infrastructural capital spend there, and certainly some adjustment or some renovation so that that we bring that part of our building, to a more contemporary point, I guess is the best way to put it. And we've got to do that. I mean, the place is, it's 50 years old. I mean, do you have a car that's 50 years old? And if you do, you're probably not driving it. It's sitting in the backyard there somewhere, right? But that's my point, right? And as part of that process, we're working away, and we have what we call reserves that we set aside for capital expenditure so that we can do some of this work, and get it together. In terms of the convention side of the business, that's going to be an interesting one, and just to see, what the buy-in is possibly going to be within that agenda. You look at facilities or at cities, I should say, like Winnipeg, who's got a brand new convention center. You got Halifax, that's just recently put a convention center in. You've got Ottawa, that's brand new now. I mean, what's that doing for them? I mean, everybody seems to be going there. And on the other side of that, you look at facilities like Calgary. They've done nothing to their convention center. Of course, they've done nothing to their arena either. And what's happening there? Well, there's threat of the Flames leaving. There's conventions which would sooner go to Banff probably than come to Calgary. That hurts the city. You've got another agenda around Edmonton that's built recently built a new arena.
Right.
They forgot about the convention center. The convention center's on the riverbank, so now the city's had to step in and, if you like, support that, by trying to keep it operationally functional, and then, of course, with the change to the Northlands Coliseum and that sort of, now moving to the side with the new Rogers Arena that they've got in Edmonton now, the whole thing kind of needs to link together. And, what a better way to probably start looking at enhancing our downtown area as well, which has changed over the years, and you would know that for sure, right?
I think we see a really strong heartbeat with the downtown, and a lot of that comes from TCU Place and the work that your team is doing there. Marty and Gerard, I think, are between the two of them have about 100 years of experience, long-time employees, and I think that is a testament to some of the things that we see regularly happening there. So when you mention things like the graduations and the concerts, not everyone can fill a 15,000 seat arena.
That's true.
Do you see, just to close this out, with an idea that maybe a lot more Saskatoonians and people in the region can support in terms of growing this facility to maybe expand with, you mentioned 125,000 people when it opened. We're on the heels of 300,000 now. Do you see an opportunity to maybe change gears a little bit and get it to work a little harder?
Well, I think I think on that agenda, Randy, that times have changed without question. So for top stars, if we want to call it that, there's more of an arena-based agenda as opposed to what there was a number of years ago. People wouldn't have thought of, back in the 1970s or late 60s or whatever, using Maple Leaf Gardens for a concert. But, obviously Air Canada Centre is used for that now. So I think there's a different niche there. I mean, we often get a lot of acts, a lot of different groups coming through that are maybe perhaps on their way up or on their way down that are still quite popular. One of the things that I'm so proud about, within our facility, and as you mentioned, I mean, we've got several members of our staff there that have been there for extended periods of time, and I mean, that's kind of part of the fabric of the facility and really what makes the thing go. But I just think of, for example, all those little girls that go on that stage and do their dance recitals every year. Okay, well that would be like you playing in Maple Leaf Gardens or Air Canada Centre. Do you know what I'm saying to you? I mean, that experience is invaluable, and to me, I mean, I think we should be so proud of that.
Bob, I want to thank you and your team, and congratulations on the 50th, and I hope we'll see you again in another few years.
Well, thank you, Randy. Pleasure to be here.
We'll be right back.